Welcome to Japanese Sleep Whispers, your sanctuary for peaceful nights and gentle dreams. Here, you will find calming bedtime stories inspired by the timeless beauty and traditions of Japan. Each story is read slowly in a soothing voice, accompanied by natural sounds such as flowing rivers and the tranquil rhythm of shishi-odoshi. Whether you seek relaxation, relief from stress, or help falling asleep, these tales invite you to drift away into a world of serenity. Imagine quiet temples, moonlit gardens, and the whispering bamboo forests as you listen. If you'd like these soothing stories to be part of your nightly routine, consider subscribing so they're always with you when you need them. Subscribe and let these stories be your nightly ritual of calm and rest. Thank you for being here. May you always find peace in every moment. Warm light of an izakaya in winter. Prologue: a lantern glowing in the snow. Winter had wrapped the small town in silence. Snow fell in slow, unhurried flakes, drifting gently from a pale sky the color of soft ash. The streets were empty, save for the delicate crunch of fresh powder settling atop rooftops, fences, and stone pathways. The world felt muted, as though every sound had been tucked under a warm blanket. The narrator walked with their scarf pulled close, steps sinking softly into the snow. Cold air touched their cheeks, leaving a faint sting that quickly softened into warmth beneath the wool. The town's familiar streets, quiet shops, shuttered windows, wooden facades dusted with white seemed to be dreaming. And then, through the distant swirl of snow, the narrator saw it. A warm lantern, round and soft, glowing amber in the winter dusk. Its gentle light seeped through the falling snow like the memory of a heart. It hung above the entrance of a small izakaya tucked between two older buildings, the Norin curtain fluttering lightly despite the stillness of the night. The lantern bore a simple hand-painted character. Deng light. Just one brush stroke, strong yet tender. The narrator felt its warmth even from afar. Their gloved hand reached forward and pushed aside the Norin. Inside, the world changed. The cold vanished, replaced by a golden hush of warmth, wood, and whispered conversations. And so began another quiet night in winter, held gently in the warm light of an izakaya. Chapter 1: The scent of broth and steamed rice. The door slid shut behind the narrator, soft against the steady hush of snowfall outside. At once, warmth wrapped around them thick, soothing, filled with scents that melted winter from the bones. Rich broth simmering on the stove, the earthy aroma of miso, grilled fish crackling faintly, and the comforting fragrance of steamed rice rising from bamboo baskets. The izakaya was small, only 6 counter seats and 2 low tables near the window. Its wooden interior glowed with amber light, lanterns wrapped in thin washi paper casting soft shadows on the walls. Old calligraphy scrolls hung behind the counter, their ink strokes relaxed and flowing, as though written on a quiet day many years ago. A kettle on the stove let out a low, contented hum. Behind the counter, the owner looked up with a gentle smile. He was a man in his late 50s, his hair touched with faint gray, his eyes calm as still water. A towel rested loosely around his neck, and his hands moved with a practiced grace as he stirred a pot over a low flame. "Yuki no naka, yokoso," he said warmly. "Welcome in from the snow." The narrator bowed lightly. "It's colder than I expected tonight." The owner chuckled softly. "Winter has its own timing. But the warmth comes quickly once you sit." He gestured to a counter seat. The narrator sat, their legs grateful for the stillness. The counter wood was smooth beneath their gloved hands, polished by years of quiet nights and gentle conversations. Without asking, the owner poured a cup of hot tea. Steam curled upward like a small ghost rising into the lantern light. The narrator held the cup, letting warmth seep into their fingers before taking a sip. The tea tasted faintly of roasted barley, deep and soothing. Behind the counter, the owner lifted a lid from a simmering pot. A wave of rich aroma flowed out, broth infused with ginger, leeks, and winter vegetables. "It's Nabe season," he said with a smile. "Cold nights are better with something warm shared across the counter." Snow continued to fall outside, pressing softly against the window, yet inside the izakaya, time felt gentle, almost suspended. The narrator watched the pot, the rising steam, the lantern flicker, and felt a calm settle into their chest, as though this place the warmth, the quiet. The scent of broth had been waiting just for them on this winter night. Chapter 2: Footprints that melt into warmth. The izakaya door opened once more, letting in a brief whisper of winter air. Soft flakes drifted across the wooden floor before melting instantly in the warmth inside. Someone else had arrived. The narrator glanced toward the entrance and saw a young woman brushing snow gently from her coat sleeves. She wore a knitted gray scarf and carried a small cloth bag tied neatly with a red string. Her cheeks were slightly flushed from the cold, and her breath lingered in the air like a faint cloud. The owner greeted her with a familiar nod. "Oya, hyomo kitane." "Oh, you've come again tonight." She smiled, a calm expression both warm and shy. It was too quiet at home. I thought maybe the neighbor would be ready by now. The owner chuckled. You know the timing better than I do. She took a seat 2 stools away from the narrator, placing her cloth bag beside her. The bag made a soft thud, perhaps books, perhaps something else with comforting weight. Steam rose from the pot, carrying the scents of vegetables and broth across the counter. The narrator sipped tea quietly, watching the scene unfold like a gentle play in which silence was the main performer. The woman warmed her hands around her own cup of tea and finally glanced toward the narrator with a small bow. It's cold tonight, isn't it? Her voice was soft, matching the izakaya's gentle atmosphere. Yes, the narrator replied, returning the bow. But it feels warmer already. She nodded, eyes drifting toward the simmering pot. This place does that. It feels like an old kotatsu someone forgot to put away for the season. The owner huffed a laugh. I'll take that as a compliment. For a while, none of them spoke. Silence in the izakaya wasn't uncomfortable, it was warm in its own way, like the quiet between snowfalls. Outside the window, snowflakes continued their steady descent, melting slightly when they touched the warm glow of the lantern. Inside, the nave bubbled softly, the kettle hummed, and the air carried the soft music of winter. Comfort, the kind that lifted gently into the lantern light and made the world feel safe. At last, the owner placed 3 small bowls on the counter. Well, he said, ladle in hand, I think it's time. With slow, practiced motion, he filled the bowls one by one with steaming broth and tender vegetables. The aroma deepened ginger, miso, leafy greens, a hint of citrus from yuzu rind floating on top. Itadakimasu, the narrator murmured. The heat filled their mouth, then their chest, then something quieter inside, a warmth that reminded them of distant winter nights. Kotatsu blankets, and the soft ticking of an old clock. The woman took a spoonful and closed her eyes, her shoulders slowly relaxing. Perfect, she whispered. The owner smiled without saying anything, but his eyes said everything, that this little room, these few seats, this warm pot, and these quiet moments shared between strangers were enough to chase winter from the edges of the night. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, 3 warm bowls glowed gently on the counter, and the footprints left at the entrance slowly melted into the floorboards, as though winter itself had decided to rest for a while. Chapter 3: Stories rising with the steam. The warmth from the nave filled not only the izakaya but the space between the 3 people gathered inside. Outside, the snow fell thicker now, each flake drifting slowly as though reluctant to touch the ground. Inside, lamps glowed softly behind paper shades, their light mixing with the scent of simmering broth. The narrator set their empty bowl on the counter, feeling a pleasant heaviness in their hands and chest. The woman beside them also seemed content, tracing the rim of her bowl with a fingertip, letting the warmth soak into her skin. The owner, polishing a cup with a soft cloth, broke the gentle silence. Snow this early in the season, it reminds me of my grandmother. The narrator looked up. The woman smiled slightly, encouraging him to continue. She used to make a pot of Odin whenever snow was in the forecast. Even before a single flake fell, she'd say, "Winter walks faster than people notice." He chuckled. I never knew what she meant until I was older. The woman tilted her head. What did she mean? That you only notice winter after it's been sitting beside you for a while. He placed the polished cup on the shelf. But food warmth, people. Those things remind you you're not facing the cold alone. A hush followed his words, not heavy, not sad, just a soft settling of understanding. The woman loosened the knot of the red string around her cloth bag. "I brought something today," she said softly, almost shy. She opened the bag and took out a thin volume wrapped in protective paper. The narrator recognized the material old bookshop wrapping, the kind used for fragile or rare editions. She placed it gently on the counter. "It's a collection of winter haiku. My grandfather wrote some of them. I read from it every winter, but it feels different reading aloud to warm air instead of an empty room." The owner nodded. "If you'd like to read one, we'd be honored." She hesitated before opening the thin book, turning the pages with reverent care. The paper crackled softly, the sound of age, of many winters past. She found a page, rested her fingertips along the margin, and read. "Under lantern light snowflakes pause in silent dance, warm breath holds the night." The narrator felt something settle in their chest, like snow landing gently before melting into warmth. The izakaya seemed to exhale, the steam from the pot rising in slow, swirling shapes as if responding to the poem. The owner leaned on the counter with a quiet smile. "Your grandfather had a good eye. And a warm heart." She closed the book, brushing a thumb over the cover. He believed winter wasn't cold by nature. He said it only feels cold when we forget to share our warmth. The narrator nodded softly, almost to themselves. Outside, the snow shifted direction, carried by a gentle wind as though searching for its own warmth. Inside, steam rose from the pot once more, and with it rose stories, the owner's memories, the woman's poetry, and the narrator's quiet reflections, all circling in the glow of the lamps. There was something sacred in that small room, not in a religious sense, but in the way humans passed warmth to one another in small, honest ways. Another bowl was ladled, more tea poured, and the night deepened in the most comforting way, not dark, but softly illuminated by candle, by conversation, by company. And the steam continued its gentle ascent, carrying with it the stories no winter wind could ever steal. Chapter 4 Lantern Glow on Quiet Hearts. The night outside deepened, though inside the izakaya, time felt softened, as if the clocks themselves had chosen to rest in the warmth. The narrator watched the steam curl upward from the nabe in gentle spirals, each tendril catching the lantern's glow before dissolving into the air. The izakaya's lamps were small paper shaded and slightly yellowed with age, yet their light warmed every corner as if they were tiny suns. The owner refilled cups of tea, his movements slow and practiced. The fragrant steam rose again, carrying notes of roasted barley and a hint of citrus peel. The woman stroked the edge of her haiku book absent-mindedly, as though feeling the warmth of every winter spent reading it. A comfortable silence, the kind that needed no filling, settled over the room. But the owner broke it gently. "You know," he said, leaning against the counter, "this place wasn't always so quiet." The narrator blinked in surprise. It was hard to imagine the izakaya as anything but a haven of calm. "Oh yes," the owner chuckled. "When I first opened it, I thought I'd make it lively. Bright lanterns, busy chatter, people coming in from the snow laughing and stumbling." He shook his head fondly, as though at an old mistake. "But winter has a way of teaching you what a place wants to be. People came, yes, but they came for calm. For a moment to breathe. For warmth they weren't getting anywhere else." The woman nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe the lanterns knew before you did." He laughed. "Maybe so. They always flickered more softly at night, as if whispering." The narrator felt it too. The lamp's gentle glow was different from electric light. It wasn't just illumination, it was invitation. Outside, snow brushed softly against the windows, flakes drifting sideways in the wind like white feathers caught in a slow-motion dance. Inside, the warmth created a small world of its own. The narrator found themselves speaking without entirely meaning to. "When I came in earlier, I felt like something was waiting for me. Not a person, exactly, but something warm. Something familiar." The owner did not look surprised. "Places remember," he said. "They hold warmth, just like people do. And sometimes, when someone needs it, they give it back." The woman smiled gently. "That sounds like something my grandfather would have written." She opened the book again, flipping through pages softened by use. Her eyes lingered on a poem near the middle. "This one," she said quietly, "feels like tonight." She read. Lantern light flickers, waiting for a weary soul warmth without a name. The narrator felt the words settle in the izakaya like fresh snow on a still earth. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the sound of the nabe's gentle bubbling, the soft hiss of water in the kettle, and the muted whisper of snow outside filled the quiet air. The owner finally nodded, almost to himself. "That's exactly it," he said. "This place doesn't need a name for its warmth. It just gives it." The woman closed her book with the care one uses for fragile things. The lanterns glowed brighter for a moment, as if agreeing. And as the night pressed softly around the izakaya, the three people inside felt something subtle shift, a deeper warmth, a deeper calm, a deeper sense of being gently held within the glow of winter light. Chapter 5: Snowfall That Listens. The wind outside softened, and soon the snowfall settled into a slow, steady drift, a quiet, patient rhythm, as though winter itself were listening to the heartbeat of the izakaya. Inside, warmth held steady. Not growing stronger, not fading, but balanced perfectly, like a blanket tucked just right around weary shoulders. The narrator watched as the owner carried a small tray from the back of the shop. Upon it were 3 delicate plates, each holding a modest slice of yaki-imo, still steaming, its golden interior soft and glistening with natural sweetness. "A little treat," the owner said, setting the plates down. "Not much, but winter always asks for something simple." The woman's eyes lit softly. "My grandmother used to make these after a snowstorm." She lifted a bite with her chopsticks. The smell brings back the sound of her old stove. The narrator tasted the yaki-imo. It melted on the tongue, sweet, clean, honest. Its warmth spread through their chest, as though the root had grown sunlight and stored it for this very night. After a few quiet moments, the woman placed her chopsticks down and looked toward the window. "The snow feels different tonight." The narrator followed her gaze. The flakes outside seemed slower, more deliberate, lingering in the space between sky and earth as if savoring their descent. "Snow listens," the owner said. His voice was calm, steady, like the last embers in a hearth. "When a place is warm inside, the snow outside slows down." "That's what my father used to say." The woman smiled. "It's like the snow wants to join us." The narrator nodded. "It feels like it's waiting for something." The owner poured more tea, the sound of liquid filling cups blending with the hush of the winter night. "Maybe it's waiting for the world to quiet," he said softly. "Snow doesn't like rushing. It falls best in places where hearts have settled. The lanterns overhead flickered faintly, not from wind, but as if acknowledging the truth in his words. The woman opened her book again, though she didn't read from it this time. Instead, she traced her finger down a blank section of paper near the back. "My grandfather left a few pages empty," she murmured. "He said some winters needed to write themselves." The narrator tilted their head. "That's a beautiful idea. He believed nights like this, quiet, warm, gentle, should live on somewhere. Even if only on a single empty page." She closed the book and exhaled slowly, as though releasing a long-kept breath. The owner leaned against the counter, arms loosely crossed, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe," he said, "tonight will find its place in those blank pages." No one answered aloud, but the silence that followed felt like agreement. The snow outside thickened again, but its descent remained slow and tender, a winter lullaby written across the air. Inside the izakaya, the three sat together: a shopkeeper, a quiet traveler, and a woman holding the memories of winters long past. No one hurried. No one needed to. The night listened. The snowfall listened. And warmth filled the space between every breath. Chapter 6: The Gentle Secret of Winter Air. The izakaya's door, old but sturdy, creaked softly as a faint draft of winter slipped through its wooden seams. Not enough to chill the room, just enough to remind them that beyond the warm walls, the night was deep and white. The narrator placed a hand near the edge of the counter. The wood was smooth from years of touches, hands of travelers, locals, workers returning from long days, and wanderers seeking something they couldn't name. Tonight, it felt especially warm. The owner noticed the narrator's lingering touch. "That counter," he said with a small smile, "was part of my father's old house." The woman looked up, curious. "Oh? You brought it here?" He nodded, wiping a small spot on the surface with the corner of a towel. "It used to be a doorway frame. People touched it every day without thinking, coming home, leaving, coming back again. When the house was taken down, I couldn't let it go." The narrator smiled softly. "So this izakaya has more memories than we realized." The owner nodded, not with pride but with a kind of gentle acceptance. "This place isn't new. It's made of things that remembered warmth long before I opened its doors." A quiet settled in, deeper than the silences before, not empty, but full. Full of the weight of shared stories, full of the warmth of time that had soaked into the very wood around them. The woman looked down at her haiku book, then at the lantern hanging above them. "Maybe that's why it's so easy to breathe here," she murmured. "Like the air knows us." The narrator took a slow breath, Noticing it for the first time, the izakaya air was warm, yes, but also soft, almost velvety. It embraced instead of simply filling the lungs. The owner chuckled. My mother used to say winter air has a secret. The woman tilted her head, intrigued. What kind of secret? That cold air makes warmth more honest. Anything warm in winter, food, light, a kind word holds nothing back. It can't. Cold makes sincerity stronger. The woman closed her eyes for a moment, letting the words sink in. That's true, she whispered. It feels true. The narrator felt the truth of it in their own chest, the way the steam from the pot felt like a gentle hand, the way tea soothed not just the throat, but something quieter, the way quiet conversation warmed even the spaces between words. Outside, the snow thickened again. Flakes danced sideways, carried by a gentle wind that hummed against the eaves. The lanterns in the izakaya flickered, glowing deeper, fuller, as if responding to the cold pressing against the walls. The owner went to check the small heater in the corner, tapping it with a practiced hand. Still running, he said softly. This old place doesn't give up easily. The narrator chuckled. Maybe it knows we're here tonight. The woman smiled, her scarf gently shifting around her neck. Everything tonight seems to know. No one disagreed. Because in that moment, it did feel as though the izakaya, the lanterns, the wooden counters, the rising steam, and even the winter wind outside were somehow aware of the small gathering of people sharing warmth in a world wrapped in snow. And within that awareness, there was a gentle secret. That winter wasn't lonely when people stayed warm together. Chapter 7: A pause between snowflakes. The night had grown deeper, yet the izakaya's warmth held strong, not pushing against the cold, but gently coexisting with it, as though the two were old companions sitting at different ends of the same bench. The narrator noticed it first, a soft ringing, faint and distant, drifting in through the walls. The woman lifted her head. Wind chimes? The owner nodded. They hang above the door. They usually only sound when snow falls a certain way. The chimes were not loud. They were light, like a whisper, as if each tiny bell were chiming not to announce itself, but to acknowledge something unseen. The woman smiled softly. It sounds like winter is knocking. The narrator listened again. The chimes rang once more, a gentle, delicate sound, like two snowflakes brushing together. The owner stepped to the doorway and cracked it open just a little. Cold air slipped in, but only brief, light, warm waves from inside immediately pushed it back. He looked upward and nodded. Ah, snow's turning finer, he said. Almost like powder. He shut the door with care, as though sealing in the warmth again. The woman took a slow sip of tea. "It feels like the whole night has paused," she murmured. "As if even the snow is waiting." The narrator nodded. "Yes. Like we're in the middle of a breath." The owner returned behind the counter, drying his hands. "It happens sometimes," he said. "These moments when winter hushes itself. When everything outside, wind, snow, even the streets, goes quiet at the same time." He glanced at the kettle, which was starting to hiss softly. "My father called it a snow pause. He used to say that winter needs to rest, too." A comfortable silence followed. Not heavy, not empty, just peaceful. The kind of silence that came from being where you were meant to be. The woman placed her haiku book gently on the counter and looked at the narrator. "Have you ever experienced a moment like this? This pause?" The narrator considered the question, resting their hands around the warm teacup. "Yes," they said slowly. "But never this clearly. Tonight feels like time is holding its breath." The woman nodded, her expression soft, almost wistful. "I think winter gathers memories in these moments." She traced the edge of her cup with her fingertip. "Not the big ones. Just the small ones that keep people warm." The owner chuckled. "Like what? Steaming tea? A good pot of nade?" She laughed softly. "Yes. And lantern glow. And the sound of someone stirring a pot. And the feeling that you're not alone in the cold." The narrator felt something shift gently inside their chest, not dramatic, not sudden, but like a blanket being pulled a little closer. Outside, the snow fell more delicately than before. Each flake seemed to hover in the air a moment longer than gravity required. Inside, the lanterns flickered once, as though acknowledging the beauty of the moment. The owner poured the last of the tea into 3 cups and raised his own slightly. "To winter pauses," he said quietly. The narrator and the woman lifted theirs in response. "To warmth that waits," the woman added. "And to nights like this," the narrator finished. Their cups touched with the softest clink, a sound so gentle that even the snowflakes outside seemed to listen. The tea warmed their hands. Their breath rose and blended softly in the air. And for a long moment, the world truly did pause in perfect, quiet harmony. Chapter 8: Footsteps returning to warmth. The moment of perfect stillness passed gently, not broken, but eased into movement, like a breath finally released after being held too long. The narrator set their cup down slowly. The tea's warmth lingered on their palms, even though the cup itself had already cooled. Outside, the snow began falling in softer layers, like feathers shaken loose from a winter robe. The world was still quiet, but no longer paused, simply slow, gentle, thoughtful. The izakaya's lantern swayed faintly, casting its warm glow across the wooden floorboards in soft waves. The owner wiped down a section of the counter even though it was already clean. It was an absent-minded motion, one that came from years of tending to a space he cared for deeply. "You know," he said without looking up, "people always tell me this place feels warmer than it should." The woman tilted her head. "Is it because of the stove? Or the lanterns?" He shook his head lightly. "No, not really. It's the footsteps." The narrator blinked. "The footsteps?" "Yes." He set the cloth down and leaned on the counter, eyes gentle. "This floor has known so many people. People are tired from work. People who got lost. People who needed a place to breathe. People who didn't know they were cold until they stepped inside." He tapped the wooden boards with the tip of his finger. "Every footstep leaves a bit of warmth behind. Not heat warmth. Memories. A kind of quiet comfort that stays in the grain of the wood." The woman looked down at her boots, then at the floor beneath her stool. "So when we walked in tonight we added to it." The owner smiled softly. "You did. You're part of the warmth now." The narrator felt a subtle shift inside, something like gratitude, but softer. Outside, a pair of faint footsteps approached in the snow, muffled by the thick blanket covering the street. The woman turned slightly toward the door. "Someone else?" The owner listened for a moment, then shook his head. "No, just the snow settling." He chuckled. "Snow makes its own footsteps when it gets heavy enough." The narrator found that strangely comforting, that even the snow walked slowly through the night, leaving traces of its quiet journey. The woman warmed her hands around her cup. "I didn't realize footsteps could carry warmth." The owner nodded. "Most warmth people feel isn't from stoves or lamps." He looked at the nade pot as if it were an old friend. "It's from others who were there before them." The narrator breathed in deeply. The air carried the scent of simmering vegetables and faint citrus, not overpowering, just enough to remind them that food was waiting, that comfort existed, that they were not alone. The woman gazed at the lanterns thoughtfully. "That might be why this place feels familiar," she said. "I've only come here a few times, but it feels like I've been returning for years." The owner nodded. "That's what a good place does." The snow outside shifted direction again, swirling lightly under the street's dim lights. The narrator listened to the soft hiss of the kettle, the gentle bubbling of the nade, the faint chime above the door, and the almost inaudible creak of the wooden floorboards, as though the footsteps of past winters were settling into place. Inside, warmth wrapped around them all. It wasn't intense, nor dramatic, nor demanding. It was the warm light of an izakaya in winter, quiet, steady, and always waiting for the next pair of footsteps to return to its glow. Chapter 9: The Lantern That Never Sleeps. The night outside thickened with snow, yet the izakaya's lantern glowed unchanged, steady, gentle, patient. Its warm light rested on the wooden beams like a familiar hand. The narrator looked toward the lantern closest to the entrance. Its paper shade was slightly worn, the edges softened and frayed with age. But the glow within it was clear and unwavering. The owner followed the narrator's gaze and smiled quietly. "That lantern has been with me since the beginning," he said. "Before I even had these tables, before the stove, before the counter." The woman's eyes widened slightly. "Really?" "Yes." He stepped closer to the lantern and adjusted it gently, as though tucking a blanket around an old friend. "It used to hang outside my parents' house. They lit it every winter night so travelers wouldn't lose their way in the snow." The narrator felt warmth bloom inside, as though the lantern's light had found a place within their chest. The woman touched the red string of her cloth bag thoughtfully. "So it's guided people for a long time." The owner nodded, his eyes soft. "That lantern has seen more winters than I can count. It's watched people pass by, families, merchants, wanderers. It's lit the paths of those who were lost and comforted those who were cold." He paused a moment, as if listening to a memory. "And when I opened this place, I knew it had to come with me." A hush fell, gentle as the snow outside. The narrator whispered, "It must have memories of its own." The owner chuckled. "If lanterns could talk, it would never stop." The woman opened her haiku book again, flipping until she found a page filled with tiny handwriting notes, written in the margins by someone who had loved winter deeply. "My grandfather wrote something about lanterns," she said softly. She read, "In winter's silence a lantern remembers all warmth that has no end." The words settled in the izakaya like a soft snowfall. The lantern above them flickered once, a single, delicate tremble, not from wind, but as if in response to the poem. The narrator exhaled slowly. "Maybe that's why the room feels alive." The owner nodded. "A lantern doesn't change the world," he said. "It just keeps a small circle warm. But when enough circles join together," he gestured around the izakaya, "they make a place where people can rest." The woman smiled. "And where winter feels a little less lonely." Outside, the snow continued to fall, silent, constant, unhurried, as though honoring the glow of the old lantern. Inside, the warmth seemed to deepen. The soft light washed over the counter, the steaming pot, the teacups cooling on the wood, and the three quiet souls sharing the night. The narrator felt the gentle certainty fate then when the izakaya closed for the night, even when the snow piled high, even when winter stretched on. The lantern would remain, watching, waiting, keeping a single, unwavering flame for anyone seeking warmth in the heart of winter. A lantern that never slept. Chapter 10 Snowfall on the Silent Street. When the narrator and the woman finally stepped outside the izakaya, the night had grown softer, as though the snow itself had been listening to their conversation through the wooden walls. The world was white. Fresh snow layered gently over the stone path, over the rooftops, over the lantern posts lining the empty street. Each flake drifted slowly, as if careful not to disturb the peacefulness that had settled over the town. Behind them, the izakaya's door slid shut, and the old lantern continued to glow through the frosted window, a warm heartbeat pulsing within winter's quiet body. The narrator pulled their scarf closer. It's even quieter now. The woman walked a few steps ahead, her boots sinking softly into the powdery snow. "Winter nights always sound like this," she said, her voice wrapped in the hush of falling flakes. "It's like everything is listening to something gentle." They began walking together down the narrow street. Their footprints lined up side by side, two parallel trails stretching into the deepening night. The woman lifted her face slightly toward the sky. "Do you ever feel," she asked, "as if snow slows down time? As if the world is telling us we don't have to hurry?" The narrator took a moment to feel the snow on their coat, the way each flake melted into tiny droplets of cold. "Yes," they answered softly. "It feels like the night is breathing slowly. Like it wants us to breathe slowly, too." The woman's smile was faint but warm. Ahead, the stone street gently curved, leading toward the river. Even from a distance, they could hear the muted sound of flowing water beneath a crust of ice. Soft lanterns lit the way, tall wooden frames with paper shades, some painted with plum blossoms, others left plain. Their light shone through the snowflakes, creating floating halos in the air. The narration of the night seemed almost spoken by the snow itself. A temple bell tolled somewhere far away, a single, low note so calm, so deep, that it felt like it traveled not through the air but through the space inside their chests. The woman stopped walking and looked around. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Even more than I remembered." The narrator tilted their head. "You've seen it like this before?" "Yes. Every winter when I was little. I used to walk these streets with my grandfather. He would take my hand and tell me the names of trees, of lanterns, of the spirits that guard the road at night." She laughed softly, the sound melting into the snow-filled air. I believed every word. The narrator smiled. Maybe they're still here. Maybe, she echoed. Then she added, maybe that's why this town feels so safe at night. As if it's protected by old stories. A breeze drifted between the houses, carrying the faint scent of cedar. The narrator felt a quiet certainty settle inside that. The night was watching over them, with all its gentle lanterns, its silent snowfall, its ancient pathways softened by time. Together, they walked on. Their footsteps made the only sound, soft and rhythmic, like two pens writing in fresh powder. Ahead, the river glimmered faintly beneath the bridge. The town, wrapped in winter's cloak, seemed to drift lightly between waking and dreaming, a peaceful world suspended in time. And the snow kept falling. Slowly, softly, endlessly. Chapter 11 Footprints toward the riverbank. The snow continued to fall in soft, unhurried spirals as the narrator and the woman approached the river. The bridge ahead, an old wooden arch with stone supports, looked as though it had grown naturally from the landscape, its shape softened by layers of snow that rested gently along its rails. A faint amber glow spilled from a lantern hung at the center of the bridge. It swayed slightly in the night breeze, casting an oval of warm light on the wooden planks. The sound of the river, muffled but steady, rose to greet them as they stepped closer. The woman stopped at the foot of the bridge and turned to the narrator. "Do you hear it?" she asked. The narrator nodded. "It's quieter than I imagined." "It always is, in winter," she said. "The river holds its voice back, as if it doesn't want to disturb the snow." Her coat rustled softly as she took a few steps onto the bridge. The snow-laden wood creaked, not from age, but from the tenderness of winter. The narrator followed, feeling the lantern's warmth against their face even though the wind was cold. Halfway across the bridge, the woman rested her hands on the railing and leaned forward slightly. Below them, the surface of the river was a mosaic of drifting ice. Black water threaded through the white shapes, moving slowly, as ink poured into stillness. "It looks like a painting," the narrator said. The woman's breath formed a soft cloud. "My grandfather used to say," she began, "that rivers in winter teach us how to move through life. Quietly, carefully, without losing ourselves." The narrator let the words settle. Something was comforting in the way she recalled her memories, not with longing, but with affection that had matured over the years. "Did you come here with him often?" the narrator asked. She traced a finger along the snow dusting the railing. "Every time the first deep snow fell." We would cross this bridge and leave footprints along the riverbank to greet the new season." She paused. "I guess I kept doing it long after he was gone." The narrator watched as her eyes softened, not with sadness, but with a gentle acceptance. "Maybe," the narrator said, "you kept walking because he taught you to love the quiet places." A small smile formed at her lips. "You might be right." A gust of wind carried fresh snow across the bridge, whirling between them like a small winter dance. The woman lifted her hand and let a few flakes land on her palm. She watched them melt slowly, leaving tiny droplets of cold shimmering on her skin. "It's strange," she said softly. "Even though it's so cold out here, I don't feel lonely." The narrator leaned against the railing beside her. "Sometimes," they said quietly, "a peaceful place can keep us company." She looked at the river, the snow, the lantern light glowing through the curtain of flakes. Then she nodded. The two stood there in silence, watching the river carry its quiet story downstream. Above them, the lantern swayed again, a slow, graceful motion casting shifting shadows on the snow-covered planks. After a while, the woman stepped away from the railing. "Shall we walk down to the riverbank?" she asked. "It's not far. The snow there always feels different. Softer somehow." The narrator nodded. Together, they descended from the bridge and followed a narrow path that wound gently downward. Branches from nearby pines arched overhead, heavy with snow, forming a natural canopy. The river whispered on their left, its voice low and soothing. Their footprints formed a new trail in the untouched snow slow. Side by side, unhurried. Finally, they reached the riverbank. The snow beneath their feet was indeed softer, as if winter itself had brushed it into place with careful, thoughtful strokes. The woman crouched down and pressed her glove lightly into the snow, leaving a perfect imprint. The narrator did the same. Two handprints next to two sets of footprints rested quietly by the river. No wind came to disturb them. No sound broke the gentle hush. It felt like a moment held in time. A moment the river would remember as it continued its slow winter journey. Chapter 12 Lantern Reflections on the Winter River. The riverbank felt like another world, quiet, sheltered, and wrapped in a softness that only winter could create. The woman and the narrator stood side by side, listening to the hushed murmur of water beneath drifting sheets of ice. Above them, bare branches stretched into the night sky, their silhouettes etched against faint moonlight filtering through clouds. Snowflakes continued their gentle descent, each one spinning like a tiny, delicate lantern. The woman took a slow breath. "Do you see that?" she asked. The narrator followed her gaze toward the water. There, near the far side of the river, a small cluster of lanterns glowed faintly round paper shapes suspended from a row of ancient wooden posts. Their warm light shimmered across the river's surface, broken and reunited again by the drifting ice. The reflections wavered gently, as if they were breathing. "I didn't expect lanterns to be lit this late," the narrator said softly. "They're always left on in winter," she replied. "Old tradition. They say the lights guide wandering spirits and lonely travelers." She paused, then added with a faint smile, "Tonight, I guess they're guiding us." The narrator watched the lanterns, their glow brightening the air with a warmth that defied the cold. A small breeze stirred, rustling the trees, making the lanterns sway together in a slow, rhythmic motion. The woman brushed snowflakes from her sleeve. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about the lantern keeper," she said. "An old man who tended them every evening even on the coldest nights. People said he talked to them. That he believed each lantern carried a memory." "A memory?" the narrator asked. She nodded. "A memory of someone who walked this river path before. A laugh, a step, a whispered wish." He said lanterns can hold all of that. The narrator let their eyes drift to the glowing row across the river. "Maybe that's why they feel warm." "Maybe so." The wind softened again. A hush settled around them. A single lantern's reflection flickered brighter for a moment, a brief shimmer across the dark winter water. The narrator wondered whether it was responding somehow to the memories the woman carried. She crouched down and picked up a handful of snow, shaping it loosely between her gloves before letting it fall back to the ground. "I used to come here alone," she said. "Even after I grew up. Especially when I felt lost. It always helped to stand near the river and watch the lanterns. It felt like someone was listening." She looked up at the narrator, her eyes calm but thoughtful. "And tonight," she said, "it feels the same. But not lonely anymore." The narrator felt the quiet weight of those words, not heavy, but grounding. They turned their gaze toward the bridge behind them. Even from this distance, the lantern hanging at its center glowed like a resting ember. Everything in the town seemed placed with careful intention: the lanterns, the bridge, the river, the silent streets. As if the town itself knew how to cradle the night. A soft crunch of snow sounded under the woman's boots as she stood again. "Shall we walk a little farther along the bank?" she asked. "There's a spot I want to show you. A place where the river widens. The reflections through look like floating stars." The narrator nodded. "I'd like that." They began walking along the river, their steps slow, unhurried, each one muffled by the deepening snow. The lantern reflections followed them, shivering gently across the surface of the water as if guiding them forward. The woman glanced over her shoulder. "Do you hear it?" she asked. The narrator listened. The river's murmur had changed, still quiet, but with a new softness, like a distant lullaby carried through winter air. "It's the sound of the water widening," she said. "You'll see soon." They continued a little farther until the trees opened and the river suddenly expanded before them, a broad, smooth basin of dark water dotted with pieces of drifting ice. Dozens of lantern reflections shimmered across it, stretching and folding over each other like ribbons of warm light woven into the night. The narrator felt their breath catch softly. "It really does look like stars." The woman's smile deepened. "I knew you'd understand." They stood together as light and snow mingled over the quiet water. The river moved. The lanterns glowed. And the night embraced them both with the gentlest arm of winter. Chapter 13: A shrine resting in winter silence. Beyond the wide bend of the river, a narrow path continued through a grove of cedar trees. Their tall trunks stood like silent guardians, dark against the soft white glow of falling snow. The woman brushed a bit of snow from her coat and pointed toward the path. "Just a little farther," she said. "There's a small shrine ahead. No one really visits it at night except in winter." The narrator tilted their head. "In winter?" "Yes," she answered, stepping forward with light, quiet steps. "Something about the cold makes it feel more alive." As they walked beneath the cedars, the air shifted. The scent of the trees, clean, resinous, and touched by the faint sweetness of snow, grew stronger. The world felt even quieter here. Even the river's voice had softened, like a memory drifting into the background. Small stone lanterns appeared along the path, each one capped with a perfect dome of white. Their inner candles glowed faintly, casting gentle pools of light onto the snow. The woman paused beside one. "People in town refill these candles every evening," she said. "We do it without talking about it. It's understood." The narrator ran a gloved hand along the lantern's cold stone surface. "It must be a peaceful duty." "It is," she replied with a warm smile. "I used to help when I was young. My hands were too small to hold the candle properly, so the wax would drip everywhere. My grandfather said it made the lantern happier." She laughed softly, an airy, muffled sound wrapped in winter. The narrator smiled. "There's a kindness in this place that's hard to put into words." She nodded. "Winter nights tend to show you that." As they continued walking, The trees parted just enough to reveal a small clearing. At its center stood a shrine, a modest wooden structure with a gently curved roof and a rope of braided straw hanging above the entrance. Snow lay thick on its roof, softening every edge until the shrine felt almost like a dream drawn in gentle strokes. Long paper streamers swayed from the rope, catching the lantern light like ghostly feathers. The narrator drew a slow breath. "It's beautiful. It always is in winter," she said. "During summer it's just an old shrine, but in the snow, it feels like it's listening." They approached quietly, as though stepping into sacred air. The shrine's wooden floor creaked faintly under their feet. The sound was delicate, almost apologetic, as if it didn't want to break the hush surrounding them. The woman placed her hands together, closed her eyes, and bowed her head. The narrator followed her lead, feeling a subtle stillness settle in their chest. There was no wind here. No sound but their breaths and the faint whisper of snow touching the ground. The woman's voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "I used to make small wishes here. Little ones. For good mornings. For calm nights. For the lanterns to stay bright." The narrator looked at her. "And tonight? Did you wish for something?" She opened her eyes, and there was a gentle light in them, a light that seemed to echo the lanterns along the river. "No," she said softly. "I don't think I need to tonight." The narrator felt warmth bloom quietly in their chest, despite the cold. A moment passed. Then the woman stepped to the side of the shrine and brushed snow from a small wooden bench. "Let's sit for a bit," she suggested. "You can hear the winter differently from here." They sat side by side, the wood cool beneath them, the snow falling steadily just beyond the eaves. From this angle, the lanterns by the river were faint but visible, a line of warm glimmers in the distance. The air felt still. Time seemed to slow, stretching gently around them like a soft blanket. After a long silence, the woman spoke. "When I was very small," she said, "my grandfather told me that snow was a gift. That winter wasn't the absence of warmth but a different kind of comfort." She looked upward, watching the flakes drift through the dim light. "Tonight feels like that." The narrator followed her gaze. Snow fell with patient grace, silent, steady, infinite. "I'm glad I'm here," the narrator said quietly. She turned to them, her expression soft. "I'm glad you're here, too." No more words were needed. The shrine, the trees, the snow, all of it seemed to cradle the silence gently, letting the calm settle deeper. The moment stretched, unbroken and serene. Ocean breeze from the Seto Inland Sea. Prologue, where the sea breathes gently. Night along the Seto Inland Sea arrived without haste. It did not rush in with darkness, nor did it announce itself loudly. Instead, it settled softly like a calm breath drawn between the mountains and the water. The sea lay smooth and wide, its surface reflecting fragments of moonlight that shimmered like scattered silver leaves. Far away, small islands rested in the dark, their shapes barely distinguishable, as if they were dreams the sea had not yet released. A gentle breeze moved inland. It carried the scent of salt and distant tides, mixed with the faint aroma of pine trees clinging to the slopes above the shore. The air was cool but kind, wrapping itself around the skin with quiet reassurance. Along a narrow coastal road, a single street lamp glowed. Its light stretched across the pavement and reached toward the water, where it dissolved into rippling gold. The town behind the road slept deeply. Windows were dark. Curtains rested undisturbed. Only the soft hum of electricity and the occasional creak of a moored boat suggested that life still lingered beneath the silence. Somewhere near the shoreline, a wind chime stirred. Its tone was low and gentle, rounded by the sea air until it sounded less like a sound and more like a feeling. The narrator stood facing the water, hands tucked into the pockets of a light jacket, breathing slowly in rhythm with the waves. Each breath felt fuller here, as if the sea had space enough to hold every unspoken thought. They had come without urgency, drawn not by a plan, but by the quiet promise of the coast at night, a place where time loosened, and even memories felt lighter. The tide whispered against the shore, again and again, never repeating itself, never needing to. Above, the moon hung low, its reflection stretching across the inland sea like a path made only of light. The breeze brushed past once more, cool and salt-kissed, as if the sea itself were greeting the night. And so the story began, not with words, but with breath, with water, and with a calm that spread slowly, deeply, into the listening dark. Chapter 1: The sound of oars at rest. The small harbor lay quiet beneath the moon. Fishing boats rocked gently against their ropes, their hulls tapping softly against the wooden pier, a slow, rhythmic sound that blended with the breath of the sea. The narrator walked along the pier, their footsteps muted by weathered planks polished smooth by decades of tide and sun. Each step carried the faint scent of salt and old wood, a smell that felt both foreign and deeply familiar. A lantern hung at the end of the pier, its glass clouded by years of sea air. The light inside it glowed softly, not strong enough to cut through the darkness, but warm enough to remind the night that someone cared to leave it burning. Nearby, a pair of oars rested across the side of a small boat. They moved slightly with each rise and fall of the tide. Wood touching wood with a gentle knock, not a call for attention, just a quiet confirmation that the sea was alive. The narrator paused and leaned against a post, listening. The sound of the oars at rest was soothing, almost like a lullaby written by the harbor itself. There was no hurry in it, no destination, only the steady promise that the water would continue to move, slow and patient, through the night. Beyond the harbor, the inland sea stretched wide and calm. Lights from distant islands dotted the horizon, small, unmoving stars that seemed closer than the ones overhead. The breeze carried faint voices from somewhere in town, perhaps a late radio, perhaps laughter drifting from an open window, but the sounds were softened by distance and water, losing their sharpness until they became part of the night's texture. The narrator closed their eyes and breathed in deeply. The air tasted of salt and quiet, of open water and unseen currents. It felt as though each breath reached farther here, as though the sea offered more room for the lungs, and for thoughts to rest. A fishing net lay folded on the pier, its ropes neatly coiled, its floats pale and still. The narrator ran a hand along the coarse fibers, feeling the memory of waves and hands that had worked these nets countless times before. Something was comforting in knowing that the boats were resting tonight, that the nets were dry, that the oars lay still. Even the sea, it seemed, had chosen a gentler rhythm for this night. The narrator straightened and continued walking, following the curve of the pier back toward the shore. With each step, the sounds of the harbor shifted slightly, the creak of rope, the murmur of water, the whisper of breeze through rigging. All of it blended into a single, unbroken calm. And in that calm, the narrator felt a quiet certainty that the sea did not ask for attention, only presence. To stand here, to listen, to breathe, that was enough. Chapter 2: A coastal road lit by distant windows. Leaving the pier behind, the narrator stepped onto a narrow coastal road that traced the curve of the shoreline. The sea remained close, always present, its gentle voice slipping between the pauses of the wind. Houses lined the landward side of the road, small and low, their shapes softened by darkness. Most windows were unlit, curtains drawn, families deep in sleep. Here and there, however, a single window glowed. Warm yellow light spilled softly onto the road, catching on stone walls, on flower pots resting quietly beside doorways, on bicycles leaned carefully against fences. The narrator walked slowly, letting those distant windows guide the pace. Each light felt like a small promise that warmth existed nearby, that rest was being kept for those who would need it. A cat sat atop a low stone wall, its silhouette sharp against a lit window behind it. It watched the narrator pass without moving, eyes calm, tail curled neatly around its paws. The breeze shifted direction, bringing with it the faint smell of cooking soy sauce, grilled fish, something warm and comforting, even though the meal itself had long since ended. The narrator paused beside a vending machine, humming softly in the dark. Its bright lights felt almost out of place here, yet strangely reassuring, a modern lighthouse in miniature. They rested a hand against its cool metal surface, feeling the steady vibration within. Even in the stillness, something was always quietly working. Across the road, the sea reflected the glow of the windows, breaking each light into wavering lines that stretched and shortened with the tide. The narrator continued, the sound of their footsteps blending with the hush of water. There was no destination in mind, only the road itself, and the gentle unfolding of the night. A sign creaked slightly above a closed shop, swaying with the breeze. Its painted letters had faded with salt and sun, but the name was still readable, as if memory alone kept it clear. The narrator smiled faintly. Towns like this did not demand attention. They revealed themselves slowly, through small kindnesses, a lit window, a quiet road, the steady nearness of the sea. As the road curved once more, the houses thinned, and the sound of waves grew clearer again. Ahead, the coast opened into a small beach, its sand pale beneath moonlight. The narrator slowed, feeling the night widen once more, as if the sea had gently invited them closer. Chapter 3: Moonlight on the quiet beach. The beach lay open and still, a wide crescent of pale sand stretching between the dark water and the shadowed land. No footprints marked its surface, only faint ripples shaped by wind and tide, as if the shore itself were breathing. The narrator stepped onto the sand, feeling it shift softly beneath their shoes. Each step left a shallow impression, quickly softened by the breeze, edges already beginning to fade. The waves reached the shore in slow, unhurried lines. They arrived without urgency, spread thin across the sand, and slipped back again, leaving behind a faint shimmer of moonlight. Above, the moon floated low and full, its reflection stretching across the inland sea like a silver road leading nowhere in particular. The islands in the distance rested along its edge, quiet and unmoving, as though they were keeping watch. The narrator stopped near the water's edge and listened. The sound of the waves here was different from the harbor, broader, softer, less shaped by wood and rope. It carried a deeper calm, a sense of space unbroken by walls or posts. A piece of drift driftwood lay half buried nearby, its surface smoothed and bleached by years of travel. The narrator picked it up, feeling its lightness, the way it had learned to float, to endure. They turned it over once, then placed it back where it rested, exactly as they had found it. The breeze strengthened slightly, cool against the narrator's face, carrying the clean scent of open water. It moved through their hair, through their thoughts, loosening whatever remained tight from the day. Far out at sea, a light blinked slowly, perhaps a buoy, perhaps a distant vessel passing quietly through the night. Its rhythm was steady and unhurried, never asking to be watched. The narrator sat down on the sand, pulling their jacket closer, and let the sound of the waves fill the space around them. Time seemed to thin here. Moments stretched gently, then drifted past like clouds across the moon. The beach did not expect anything. It did not hold onto footsteps or names. It accepted its presence and then let it go. As the narrator breathed in, the sea answered with another soft wave. As they breathed out, it drew back again. In that simple exchange, a quiet peace settled, not something added, but something remembered. The narrator remained there, listening, breathing, until the night felt wide enough to hold everything without effort. Chapter 4: The Path Where the Tide Once Reached. From the quiet beach, a narrow path led away toward the low hills behind the town. It was little more than packed earth and stone, edged by grasses that whispered in the night breeze. The narrator followed it slowly, leaving the sound of open waves behind. With each step inland, the sea's voice softened, still present, but gentler now, as though it were being remembered rather than heard. Old wooden posts lined the path at intervals, their surfaces worn smooth and pale. Faded markings ran along them, lines and symbols once used to show how far the tide would reach during storms long past. The narrator paused beside one post and traced the highest mark with a gloved finger. It stood well above their shoulder. The sea once came this far, the narrator thought quietly. Not with anger, but with inevitability. The path curved gently upward. Below, the beach and water spread out, moonlight softening every edge. From here, the inland sea looked almost like a lake, contained, peaceful, holding its islands close. A bench rested beneath a lone pine tree, its needles dark and still. The narrator sat for a moment, the wood cool beneath them, and listened. The sound of the sea reached them now as a low, steady hush, not waves, but presence. A reminder rather than a voice. Somewhere inland, a dog barked once, then fell silent again. The town continued its sleep, untroubled and deep. The narrator noticed how the breeze changed here. It carried less salt, more earth, the scent of soil, of grass, of trees resting for the night. It felt like standing between two worlds, the open water behind, the quiet land ahead. Neither pulled too strongly. After a while, the narrator stood and continued along the path. The stones beneath their feet were smooth, rounded by years of rain and tide. Each one felt solid, certain, patient. At the top of the path, a small clearing opened. From here, the view stretched wide: the sea, the islands, the curve of the coast, all resting together beneath the moon. The narrator took one last deep breath of sea air, then turned toward the town lights below. The night still had places to show them. Chapter 5: Lights scattered like shells. From the clearing atop the path, the town spread out below in gentle layers. No street shone brightly. Instead, small lights appeared here and there, scattered softly across the dark like shells left behind by a retreating tide. The narrator stood still, letting the view settle into them. Each light seemed to belong exactly where it was, never too many, never too few. A single road curved through the town, its shape following the coastline as naturally as the shore itself. Occasionally, a street lamp illuminated a short stretch of pavement, then surrendered it again to shadow. Beyond the last row of houses, the inland sea lay calm and wide. Its surface reflected the town lights faintly, stretching them into thin, wavering lines that trembled with the water's breath. The narrator leaned against a low stone wall and listened to the night from above. Here, sounds arrived, softened and distant: the faint hum of electricity, the whisper of wind through roofs, the sea's steady murmur below it all. A train horn sounded far away. Its tone was low and drawn out, echoing once, then fading completely. The narrator imagined the train moving quietly along the coast. Somewhere below, a door opened and closed. A brief rectangle of light appeared, then vanished again, as though the town itself had taken a slow breath. The narrator felt no need to move on. The hilltop offered a calm completeness, a sense that nothing was missing, and nothing was waiting. After a while, the breeze shifted again, bringing with it the faint scent of the sea, mixed now with something warm, perhaps wood smoke, or the memory of dinner lingering in the air. The narrator closed their eyes. From here, the night felt balanced. Water and land, light and shadow, stillness and motion, all resting together without conflict. When they opened their eyes again, the lights below seemed softer somehow, as if the town had settled even deeper into sleep. The narrator turned back toward the path, ready to descend, carrying the quiet view with them. Chapter 6: A narrow street breathing at night. The path wound gently downward from the hill, its stones cool and steady beneath the narrator's feet. As the ground leveled, the town closed in again, not tightly, but with a sense of shelter. The narrator stepped onto a narrow street lined with old wooden houses. Their walls bore the soft wear of salt air and years, their sliding doors closed, paper screens dimly glowing from within a few homes. Here, the night seemed to breathe. The breeze moved slowly between buildings, carrying the scent of tatami, of wood polished by countless hands, of the sea lingering faintly in everything. A bicycle rested against a wall, its basket empty, its bell silent. A pair of sandals sat neatly outside a doorway, toes pointing inward, waiting patiently. The narrator walked carefully, mindful of the sound of their steps. Even the stones seemed to listen, absorbing each footfall gently. Somewhere behind a wall, water flowed, perhaps a bath being drawn, perhaps a pipe settling for the night. The sound was low and continuous, as comforting as the sea itself. A cat crossed the street ahead, moving without hurry. It paused briefly to look back, eyes catching the light, then disappeared into the shadow. The narrator smiled faintly. The street curved slightly, revealing a small shrine tucked between two houses. Its roof was dark with age, its offering box worn smooth. A single candle burned inside a glass lantern, its flame steady and untroubled. The narrator stopped and bowed lightly, more out of respect than habit, then continued on. The farther they walked, the more the street seemed to soften, sounds growing quieter, edges blurring into calm. The town felt close here, not crowded, but companionable, as though the houses themselves were aware of each other's presence. At the end of the street, the narrator slowed, feeling a deep, unhurried peace settle in. This was a place that did not rush the night. It allowed it to pass at its own gentle pace. Chapter 7: Where the breeze finds the harbor again. The narrow street opened gradually, its quiet walls giving way to a wider space. Ahead, the scent of the sea grew clearer once more, salt rising gently on the night air. The narrator stepped out onto a small quay. The harbor had returned not suddenly, but as if it had been waiting patiently. Boats rested side by side, their ropes slack, their reflections long and broken on the water. A few lamps hung along the quay, their light catching on metal fittings and wet wood, then dissolving into shadow. The breeze here felt different again. It carried the coolness of open water, the faint tang of algae and tide, and something else, a quiet familiarity, as though the harbor recognized those who walked slowly. The narrator leaned against the low railing and looked out across the water. The islands were closer now, their shapes more distinct. Some showed a single light along their shore, steady and calm, never blinking. The sound of water against stone was soft and measured. It rose and fell with no pattern to follow, only the tide's patient rhythm. Behind the narrator, the town rested in layers of shadow and warmth. Ahead, the sea opened outward, wide and accepting. A rope creaked slightly as a boat shifted, then settled again. The sound felt like a sigh, not tired, just content. The narrator stood there for a long moment, hands resting on the cool railing, breathing in time with the breeze. This was a place of return, they realized. Not an ending, but a gentle circle from pier to road, from beach to hill, from street back to harbor. The sea did not mark time with urgency. It allowed wandering, its welcome coming back. The narrator straightened slowly, feeling the calm settle deeply, as if the harbor had offered something and trusted them to carry it onward. Chapter 8: Tides that do not ask to be counted. The harbor grew quieter still. Even the soft creaking of ropes seemed to slow, as though the night were easing into a deeper rest. The narrator walked along the edge of the quay, passing stacks of wooden crates that carried the faint scent of fish and seaweed. They were empty now, waiting for a morning not yet imagined. A clock somewhere in town struck once a low, distant sound, then fell silent again. No one counted the hour. There was no need. The tide moved gently, its presence felt more than seen. Water slid around stone and hull, finding its way with quiet certainty. The narrator sat on a low step near the water and let their feet rest close to the edge. The surface of the sea caught the moonlight in soft fragments, never holding it for long. Watching the tide here, the narrator felt time loosen. Minutes became impressions, moments blurred into feeling. They thought about how the sea never hurried, yet always arrived where it needed to be. It did not mark progress in numbers, but in return, high tide, low tide, and the calm between. A fishing float drifted slowly past, its color pale in the dark. It moved without direction of its own, guided by currents it did not resist. The narrator felt a quiet kinship with it. The breeze brushed the surface of the water, wrinkling it briefly before smoothing it again. Everything here seemed practiced in letting go. From a nearby boat, a bell chimed softly as it shifted, not rung by hand, but by motion alone. The sound faded quickly, leaving no echo. The narrator closed their eyes and let the tide's presence fill the silence. There was no question to answer, no thought to resolve. only the understanding that rest did not require stopping, only easing. When they opened their eyes again, the harbor looked unchanged, yet something within felt lighter, as if the night had quietly adjusted its weight. Chapter 9: The First Hint of Pale Blue. The change was subtle, so slight that it could easily be missed if one were not already listening. At the edge of the sky, where sea met air, darkness thinned into something softer. Not light yet, but the promise of it. The narrator noticed the shift reflected first on the water. The black surface began to carry a faint blue, as if the night were slowly exhaling. The harbor lights remained, their glow steady and patient, unconcerned by the coming morning. They had done their work well. The narrator stood once more and walked slowly along the quay, feeling the coolness of stone beneath their hands. The breeze felt lighter now, less heavy with night. Somewhere beyond the islands, a bird called once, a single, tentative sound, then silence again. The narrator smiled. The sea responded not with sound, but with movement, a gentle shift of tide, a soft rearranging of reflections. They thought about how mornings did not arrive with urgency. They seeped in gradually, like color spreading through water. The town behind the harbor remained asleep, its windows dark, its streets held in a final, tender quiet. The narrator leaned on the railing and watched the horizon change in shade at a time. There was no need to stay for the full daylight. This moment, balanced between night and morning, felt complete. The breeze carried a final breath of night air, cool and salt-kissed, then moved on. The narrator took a deep breath in return, letting the calm settle where it wished. The sea had spoken, not in words, but in patience. And the narrator had listened. Chapter 10: When the Sea Releases the Night. The horizon continued to soften, its pale blue deepening, just enough to be felt rather than clearly seen. The night did not resist this change. It loosened its hold willingly, like a tide turning without announcement. The narrator stepped away from the railing and walked slowly toward the end of the quay. The stone beneath their feet felt colder now, holding the last traces of darkness. Boats remained still, their outlines clearer than before. Ropes, knots, and buoys emerged from the shadow, revealing themselves quietly, without ceremony. The lanterns along the harbor flickered once, then steadied. Their light no longer felt like a guide, but like a companion seeing the traveler off. The breeze changed again, less cool, more open. It carried the scent of water warming slightly, of a morning still forming beyond sight. The narrator paused and looked back toward the town. Roofs and streets were slowly returning to shape, as if being remembered by the light. Somewhere inland, a kettle began to boil. The sound was distant but unmistakable, a soft, human note woven gently into the morning's approach. The narrator felt no rush to leave. The harbor held this moment carefully, allowing it to exist without pushing it forward. They closed their eyes one last time and listened. Water against stone, rope against wood, wind against skin, all of it steady, all of it is enough. When they opened their eyes again, the sea lay calm and receptive, its surface carrying the first true color of day. The night had given what it came to give. The sea had breathed it out gently. And the narrator, holding that quiet within, turned at last toward the waking town. Chapter 11. A town beginning to stir. The town did not wake all at once. It stirred slowly, as if testing the weight of morning before fully accepting it. A window opened somewhere along the street, wood sliding softly against wood. Warm air escaped briefly, carrying the faint sound of a radio voices low, unhurried. The narrator walked away from the harbor, following a familiar road back toward the houses. The sky above had turned a gentle gray-blue, even and calm, without sharp edges. Shutters lifted. A bicycle bell rang once, then laughed quietly at itself and fell silent. Footsteps echoed briefly on stone, then disappeared around a corner. The breeze remained, still touched by salt, but now mixed with the smell of bread warming, of tea steeping, of kitchens slowly coming to life. The narrator passed a small shop where the owner was sweeping the entrance. The broom moved in steady arcs, brushing away sand carried in by the night wind. The man looked up and nodded a simple acknowledgement, unspoken and complete. The narrator returned the nod and continued. The sea was still visible between buildings, its surface brighter now, its movements easier to follow. It felt content, as though it had finished speaking and was now ready to listen. Children's voices sounded faintly from somewhere inland, still sleepy, still unformed. The day was gathering itself gently. The narrator slowed their steps, letting the town's rhythm settle around them. There was comfort in knowing that nothing had been missed: the night, the harbor, the tide, all of it remained, even as morning took its place. As the narrator reached the edge of the residential street, they paused and looked back once more. The sea breathed in the distance. The town moved quietly forward. And somewhere between the two, the calm of the night stayed, carried gently into the day. Chapter 12. The breeze that stays. Morning had arrived, not as a moment, but as a feeling. The sky above the Seto inland sea was pale and open, its light spread evenly, as if it had learned something from the night. The narrator stood at the edge of town where the road curved back toward the water. The harbor was still visible from here, boats resting, masts tracing thin lines against the brightening sky. The breeze moved once more through the street, lighter now, but familiar. It no longer carried the hush of night, yet it had not lost its gentleness. The narrator closed their eyes and let it pass. Within that breeze were many things: the quiet pier, the moonlit beach, the narrow streets breathing in the dark, the tide that did not ask to be counted. None of them had disappeared. They had simply changed shape. The town continued to wake behind the narrator, doors opening, voices greeting one another, the ordinary sounds of a new day finding their places. The narrator turned toward the road ahead. There was no urgency to leave, and no need to stay. The calm carried by the sea breeze had settled somewhere deep, where it would remain long after this morning passed. As the narrator began to walk, the breeze followed briefly, then drifted back toward the water, content to remain where it belonged. The Seto Inland Sea lay open and quiet, holding the memory of night and the promise of day without distinction. And though the narrator moved on, the ocean breeze stayed soft, steady, and endlessly kind. Crickets in a Kyoto garden. Prologue, where the night learns to listen. Kyoto at night did not grow silent all at once. It softened. The last footsteps of the day faded along narrow stone paths, wooden doors slid shut with a gentle finality, and lantern light settled into still pools beneath the eaves. Above tiled roofs, the sky deepened slowly, indigo folding into black. Somewhere beyond the streets, in a garden hidden from the main road, crickets began to sing. Their sound did not rise suddenly. It emerged one voice at a time, thin and tentative, until the air itself seemed to hum with listening. The garden was old, not in the way of neglect, but in the way of patience. Moss covered the stones like quiet breath. A maple tree leaned slightly, its leaves barely stirring. A shallow pond reflected nothing clearly, only hints of moon and shadow. The narrator stood at the wooden ingawa, the veranda cool beneath bare feet. The scent of earth and leaves rose gently from the ground, mixed with the faint trace of incense lingering indoors. The cricket's song filled the spaces between thoughts. It did not demand attention. It invited it. Each chirr felt precise, as if placed carefully into the night, never overlapping too much, never rushing to be heard. The narrator lowered themselves onto the veranda, hands resting loosely in their lap, and listened. Kyoto had always been a city of layers: history beneath footsteps, silence beneath sound, stillness beneath movement. And at night, those layers seemed to align. The crickets sang not to fill the dark, but to shape it. A breeze passed through the garden, barely strong enough to move the leaves. The sound shifted subtly, then settled again, like breath finding its natural rhythm. The narrator felt something ease. Not released, not resolved, simply allowed to rest. This was a night for listening. Not for answers, not for memory, but for presence. And so the story began not with action, but with sound, with stillness, and with a Kyoto garden teaching the night how to listen. Chapter 1: Stone Paths Worn by Moonlight. The garden revealed itself slowly, as gardens in Kyoto always did. Nothing announced its presence. Nothing hurried. Stone paths curved gently through moss and shadow, each step shaped by years of rain, of careful sweeping, of feet that passed without leaving hurry behind. The narrator stepped down from the Anga wand, followed one such path. The stones were cool and slightly damp, their surfaces softened by time. Walking barefoot here felt natural, as if the garden recognized the weight and warmth of a human step. Crickets sang from unseen places. Some voices came from the grass, others from beneath stones, others still from the shadowed edges of wooden structures. Their chorus was layered but never crowded, each sound finding its own space. A lantern rested near a bend in the path, its paper sides glowing faintly. The light did not spread far. It did not need to. Where the lantern reached, moss gleamed softly, and the stone edges became gentle rather than sharp. The narrator paused beside a stepping stone that bore a small crack across its center. Rainwater had settled there, reflecting a fragment of moonlight like a silver thread. Above, a maple branch stirred. One leaf detached and drifted downward, landing soundlessly on the pond's surface nearby. The ripples faded quickly. The night returned to stillness. The narrator felt the garden's quiet awareness, not watching, but present. As if every stone and leaf knew how to hold silence properly. Moving deeper, the narrator sensed how the city beyond the wall had already fallen away. Here, Kyoto was not a destination or memory, but a breathing space. The crickets continued their song, unchanged, unconcerned by human presence. The narrator followed the path onward, each step measured, each moment widening gently. Chapter 2: The Pond That Holds the Sky. At the center of the garden, the path opened into a small clearing. Here, a pond rested quietly, its surface dark and still, as if it were holding the night in its hands. The narrator approached slowly, careful not to disturb the water's calm. The stones around the pond were placed with intention, not in straight lines, but in gentle conversation with one another. Crickets sang close to the water's edge, their voices softened by reflection. The sound seemed to rise from the pond itself, as though the water had learned how to hum. Moonlight touched the surface in broken pieces. Clouds passed overhead, and the reflection shifted subtly, never settling long enough to be plain. A carp moved beneath the surface, its presence known only by a slow widening ring. Then it disappeared again, leaving the pond unchanged. The narrator knelt beside the water and rested their hands on their thighs. The stone beneath them held the day's remaining warmth, just enough to be felt. They breathed in slowly. The air here carried the scent of wet earth, of leaves and moss, and something faintly metallic water remembering the mountains it had passed through. A bamboo spout rested at the pond's edge. It did not move, did not strike stone, did not mark time. Tonight, it was content to be silent. The narrator watched the pond for a long moment, their reflection barely visible, fragmented by darkness and ripple. It felt right that nothing was clearly seen here. The garden did not offer clarity. It offered space. The cricket's song continued, steady and untroubled, weaving through the silence without tearing it. The narrator rose slowly, feeling the calm settle deeper, and turned back toward the path, carrying the pond's quiet with them. Chapter 3: Shadows Beneath the Ingawa. The path curved back toward the house, leading once more to the Ingawa where wood met garden without needing a door between them. The narrator stepped up onto the veranda, the smooth planks cool beneath their feet. The house breathed quietly, timbers settling, paper screens holding back the faint glow of a single lamp. Shadows gathered beneath the eaves. They were not heavy or threatening, but soft-edged, as if they belonged to the wood itself. Crickets sang from the garden below, their voices now joined by the gentle creak of the house responding to the night air. The sounds fit together naturally, like two parts of the same breath. The narrator sat and leaned against a pillar, feeling its steady presence at their back. The grain of the wood ran beneath their fingertips, warm from the day, cooling slowly. Inside the room behind the paper screens, a teacup rested on a low table. The faint scent of roasted leaves lingered, carried outward by a breeze that slipped easily through the open space. The narrator listened. The city beyond the walls was distant now, reduced to an occasional sound too softened to disturb the calm. A moth drifted near the lantern, circling once, then resting quietly on the wood. The cricket's song seemed to deepen, not louder, but fuller, as if the night had settled into its final tone. The narrator felt no urge to move. The Ingawa held them gently, offering neither inside nor outside, but something in between. Here, the garden was close enough to hear, the house close enough to feel. And between them, the night rested comfortably. Chapter 4: The hour when even memory softens. Time in the garden no longer felt linear. It spread outward instead, like ripples that did not fade, only widened. The narrator remained on the Ingawa, legs drawn close, hands resting loosely in their lap. The cricket's song had settled into a steady pattern, not repetitive, but assured, as if each voice knew exactly when to enter and when to rest. Somewhere beyond the garden wall, a bell rang once. Its sound arrived muted, rounded by distance and air, and then dissolved completely. The narrator did not wonder what hour it marked. Here, time was measured differently by breath, by pause, by the spaces between sounds. The maple tree in the garden released another leaf. It turned slowly as it fell, catching a trace of lantern light, before settling into the moss without a sound. The narrator watched it land and felt something loosen gently inside a memory, perhaps, or the shape of a thought no longer needed. The crickets continued, unconcerned with recollection or anticipation. They sang because the night was here. Because the air was right. Because this moment existed. A breeze passed through the Ingawa, cool against the narrator's skin. It carried the scent of earth and wood, of water resting in shadow. It did not linger, and it did not rush. The narrator closed their eyes. Behind their eyelids, the garden remained not as an image, but as a presence. Sound and stillness intertwined, indistinguishable. This was the her when even memory softened. When the mind stopped arranging the past or preparing for the next moment. Only listening remained. And the night, pleased with this attention, continued quietly on. Chapter 5: Crickets beneath the sleepless moon. The moon had risen higher now, its light thinning as it passed through drifting clouds. It did not dominate the garden, it accompanied it. The narrator opened their eyes slowly. Nothing had changed, and yet everything felt more settled, as if the night had gently adjusted itself around their presence. The cricket's song continued without pause. Some voices faded while others emerged, a quiet exchange taking place beyond sight. No single sound claimed the night. Together, they formed a soft, living fabric. The narrator noticed how the sound seemed to come from below, from the earth itself, as though the garden were breathing through countless small throats. A stone lantern near the pond cast a faint glow upward, revealing the underside of maple leaves. Their veins appeared briefly, then disappeared again as the cloud passed on. The narrator rested their chin lightly against their knees and listened more deeply, not to individual chirps, but to the spaces between them. Those pauses felt important. They were not empty. They were resting places. Somewhere inside the house, Wood settled with a quiet sigh. The sound blended naturally with the crickets, neither interrupting nor being interrupted. The narrator felt their thoughts slow. Not stopping, just loosening their grip. Names, images, and intentions floated past without needing attention. The moonlight shifted once more, and the garden seemed to respond, shadows rearranging, edges softening further. The crickets sang on, tireless and untroubled, their song neither beginning nor ending. And beneath that sleepless moon, the narrator felt a gentle certainty that nothing more was required of this night than to be listened to. Chapter 6. The garden holds its breath. The garden seemed to pause, not in silence, but in perfect balance. The crickets still sang, yet their voices felt softer now, as if the night had drawn a thin veil over them. The sound no longer traveled outward. It stayed close, wrapped around the stones, the moss, the listening air. The narrator's breathing slowed naturally, falling into rhythm with nothing in particular. Each breath arrived without effort, left without resistance. A cloud passed fully over the moon, and the garden darkened. Lantern light remained, but dimmer, less defined. Shapes dissolved into suggestion. The narrator did not open their eyes. There was no need to see. Somewhere near the pond, a cricket stopped singing. Another took its place moments later. The exchange was seamless, unnoticed unless one was listening deeply. The night did not belong to any single sound. It was held together by quiet cooperation. The garden wall, the house, the distant city, all of them felt far away now, as if wrapped in layers of calm. The narrator felt the ground beneath the veranda, solid and patient. Felt the air resting on skin. Felt the simple fact of being held by the moment. Thoughts no longer formed sentences. They became textures, warmth, coolness, gentle continuity. The crickets sang on, not to stay awake, not to mark time, but because this was the night that had been given to them. And the garden, old and kind, held its breath not in anticipation, but in contentment. Nothing needed to change. Chapter 7. A stillness that does not end. The stillness did not arrive suddenly. It revealed itself gradually, as if it had been present all along, waiting for everything else to soften enough to notice. The crickets continued their song, but it no longer felt like sound. It felt like texture, a gentle vibration woven into the air. The narrator remained on the Ngawa, no longer aware of posture or time. There was only the sense of being here, fully and without edges. The garden existed not as a place, but as a field of quiet attention. Stones, leaves, water, wood, none stood apart. A leaf brushed lightly against another, producing the faintest whisper. The sound passed through the night and was gone, leaving no trace. The narrator's awareness drifted like moonlight through branches present, undirected, content. There was no need to follow the cricket's song. It carried itself. There was no need to hold on to wakefulness. The night was capable of holding everything. The city beyond Kyoto's walls, the centuries layered beneath the stones, the countless nights that had passed. Before all of it felt distant, yet somehow included. This stillness did not ask to be protected. It did not fear interruption. It simply continued, wide and unbroken. And within it, the narrator rested not asleep, not awake, but gently suspended in a quiet that did not end. Chapter 8: The Sound That Carries You Downward. At some point, the narrator could no longer tell whether their eyes were open or closed. The difference had lost its meaning. The cricket's song continued, steady and unbroken, but now it seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the moss, from the stones, from the spaces between breaths. Each chirr arrived softly, then dissolved, leaving behind a faint warmth in the air, like a ripple that never quite reached the shore. The garden felt deeper now, as if its boundaries had gently expanded. The walls no longer defined it. The sky no longer hovered above it. Everything rested in the same quiet plane. The narrator's body felt heavy in a comforting way, as though gravity itself had softened, guiding rather than pulling. Muscles released their small, unnoticed efforts. The hands rested without instruction. The shoulders sank. A breeze passed through once more, cool and light, barely touching the skin. It carried the scent of damp earth and something faintly sweet, fallen leaves beginning their slow return to soil. The crickets did not react to the breeze. Their song absorbed it, folded it gently into the night, and continued. Time thinned further. Moments no longer followed one another. They overlapped, blended, and settled. The narrator felt as if they were being carried not away, but inward. Downward into a place where effort was unnecessary, and awareness required no focus. Thoughts, if they appeared at all, were indistinct shapes, like clouds seen through closed eyelids. They drifted past without name or weight. The crickets sang on, not to keep the night awake, but to guide the listener into their depths. And gently, almost without noticing, the narrator followed, held by sound, by stillness, by a Kyoto garden that knew exactly how to let go. Chapter 9. When the garden dreams. The garden no longer felt external. It had become a quiet interior space, a place where sound, breath, and awareness rested together without boundary. The cricket's song softened further, not fading, but becoming rounder, as if wrapped in cotton and moonlight. The narrator's breathing found a deep, even rhythm. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. Each cycle completed itself without instruction. The pond no longer reflected the sky. It reflected feeling, coolness, depth, a calm without image. Somewhere in the garden, a cricket stopped singing for good. Its absence was not noticed as a loss, but as a space that made the remaining sounds gentler. The lantern's glow thinned to a suggestion. Light no longer shaped the night. It merely accompanied it. The narrator drifted between awareness and rest, not crossing a line, not arriving anywhere. Just floating. Memories did not surface. Plans did not form. Even the sense of self loosened slightly, becoming something softer, less defined. The crickets sang as they always had, not to be heard, but because this was the heart that belonged to them. The garden, ancient and patient, seemed to fold inward, cradling the moment. And in that gentle folding, the night itself began to dream. Chapter 10. The quiet before no words. There came a moment when even listening felt unnecessary. The crickets still sang, but their sound no longer traveled through the ears. It existed everywhere at once. A gentle vibration woven into rest itself. The narrator no longer noticed their breath, yet it continued slow, deep, unbroken. The body knew what to do without being asked. The garden had fully released its form. There were no stones now, no pond, no lantern. Only a sense of being held by something vast and kind. The night did not feel dark. Nor did it feel bright. It felt complete. Time had dissolved into softness. There was no before, no after, only a continuous, gentle now that asked for nothing. If a thought appeared, it faded before becoming language. If a feeling arose, it settled without needing a name. The cricket's song continued its quiet work, not guiding, not leading, but supporting, like water carrying something precious without ever lifting it into view. The narrator drifted deeper, not downward, not away but inward, into a stillness that required no awareness. The Kyoto garden rested. The city slept. The night breathed evenly. And in that place where words no longer followed, rest became complete. Final chapter. The night remains. Nothing announced the ending. There was no shift in sound, no change in light, no clear moment to mark. The crickets continued, or perhaps they did not. It no longer mattered. The garden remained, not as a place, but as a quiet presence that did not require attention. The narrator rested fully now. No awareness held shape. No thought reached for form. Breath moved in its own time, deep and uncounted. The old stones, the moss, the unseen pond, all of them existed peacefully without being observed. Somewhere beyond the garden, night slowly leaned toward morning, though even that distinction had softened. Nothing needed to be remembered. Nothing needed to be carried forward. The night did not end. It simply remained steady, patient, kind. And within it, sleep arrived not as an event, but as a continuation. The crickets, the garden, the listener, all resting together in the same gentle silence.